This episode is brought to you by InVeedHemp.com. Inveed has been my choice for my CBD needs for almost a year now, and I can't begin to tell you how it has improved my life. They come in 3 formulas: Clarity, Relief, and Relax. I take a Clarity drop in the morning with my coffee to get me focused, then a drop of Relief for my aches and pains and inflammation after a run or a workout. Then I do a drop of the Relax before I go to bed to help me sleep. I've gotten some of the best sleep that I've had in years, and now with my Whoop band, my recovery band, I can prove it. And now they've come out with a new mixture called Immunity, which we all need to stave off COVID-19. The Immunity Boost is a mixture of turmeric, grapefruit extract, elderberry, licorice root, and vitamin C, which we all could use a little bit more, I'm sure. I just got my first shipment in and took my first drop this morning. They come in drops, which is my choice, a tincture, roll-ons for those aches and pains, and then also gummies, which I think a lot of people out there use the gummies. So you can get it however you choose. So go place your order today. Go to InVeedHemp.com and use the code GURU20 for a 20% discount for life. CBD is a great supplement to keep you healthy and safe during these crazy times. So let's get to this week's episode. This episode of the Golf Guru Show is sponsored by Straight Down Golf Apparel. I am very excited to announce that I have become a brand ambassador for Straight Down. Thank you so much for Mike Rowley and the team for inviting me into this family. And I am very excited to start to share the mission that I feel very strongly about. As Mike Rowley founded this Straight Down company in 1989, which started as a small t-shirt company, but shortly grew into a full-range golf and lifestyle apparel brand that is now worn by some of the top athletes in the industry and now by the Guru, which I'm super, super excited about. His love of golf translates into the products, and this stuff is awesome. I can't wait to share some of the stuff on Instagram and the videos I'm doing for Swing U and with all of you. So if you want to know more about this brand, go to straightdown.com and check it out.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1, no touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am your host, Jason Sutton, and I'm the Guru. On this episode, we continue with the CGA staff, Seth, Merz, and Robbie Fails. I hope you enjoyed part 1. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that one where we talked about some case studies, definitely digging into some teaching techniques and some other cool stuff. On part 2, coming at you, we fielded some listener questions and also some of our fellow teachers that brought some really, really good topics and questions that we discuss. A little bit more techie, so hopefully you enjoy this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to part 2 of my CGA staff teacher training podcast. Enjoy. This episode is sponsored by
the Paso Robles region.
Paso Robles region of wineries. Thank you. All right, so let's we were going to try to double team it, but it's just not working. I'm distracted. All right, so back from a sponsor break and a little wine. We had some listener questions and some good topics that we want to cover on phase 2 here. So at Bryn RC8, question is, what is the recommended weight distribution on putts? I'm assuming he's talking about, setup. Do you want to see it shift, And he said, one renowned instructor claims a force plate confirmed that he was equally distributed throughout the stroke. So I'll start with this one with the body track work that we've done. What I've seen it kind of all over the board. Stability is kind of the key word here. I would say what I don't want to see is a lot of pressure in the lead side. And the reason for that is it tends to affect the angle of attack of the stroke, right? So we know that we don't want our players hitting down on putts. I think, again, back in the day, I think a lot of us taught pressure or weight more in the lead side. I think that's a big mistake. So I tend to favor 50-50 or even like 55-60 on the right, depending on the pattern of the stroke. Like if I need more rise, I'm not afraid to like give them a little bit of right side bend or, a neck tilt to the right to kind of get the putter to move up a little bit more through impact. So 50-50 is not a bad place to start. I mean, again, do you have something to measure? It's the key, right? So, I mean, a lot of people assume that they are what they are, but until they know exactly what they come out to be on like a body tracker or any kind of force plate, I'm not sure that they really know. Watching the ball roll is a definite place to start. But, I mean, it's stability is a key. Like, I would probably be more concerned with what I call thrust and sway throughout the stroke, which is what I see a lot of people suffer with that have sweet spot control issues where they're hitting the ball over the face or they're hitting on the bottom or the top of the face. So again, that goes back to like, having a reasonable posture and setup, whatever you believe in to be that. But I'm trying to get them pretty stable from the waist down, which I think kind of cleans up a lot of that sweet spot stuff. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, one question before you go into it. What do you like to do? Have you noticed any difference, or what do you like to prefer from a heel to toe perspective?
Yeah.
Not just right to left.
Yeah, I'd say more, I mean, it's kind of like full swing, but this is interesting. I got two answers for this. What I prefer and then what I'm seeing a lot of times is a little different. I would prefer to see as close to 50-50 heel to toe as possible. But a lot of times I will see the left toe and the right heel match and the right toe and the left heel match, which, again, makes a very stable base, right? So whatever kind of keeps them sort of solid-ish, and I think there's, I haven't tested a lot on long putts. So I think there's going to be some movement on long putts. You'll see some pelvises and some buttocks moving around a bit just because it's got, it's difficult. And there has to be probably a little bit of a pressure shift to get the ball to go 60 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet. My preference, again, and this is just me, not with a huge amount of research, but enough, and I teach a decent amount of putting, is I would prefer more rotation than slide. Okay, so think about if you had a preference where the lower body would rotate back and forth. Nobody can see my hand right now in the podcast, but I'm sort of moving like in a circular motion or motion, as opposed to side. I would think that would be more advantageous to hitting the sweet spot more consistently, because it's like a mini golf swing, right? If you're sliding back and forth, I think that's going to affect a lot more things that could create problems. So good question. All right, here's an interesting one in sort of the world of golf. I'm interested to hear you guys' take on this. Kevin Schoolcraft, old student of mine, goes way back to my Dana Rader days. Do you believe the ball/tech should be halted or rolled back? And if so, do you believe in bifurcation or across the board? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that we should halt any sort of advances in the game. I think that the people that they're focusing the most on are the people that are tearing these courses apart, which is in the smallest minority of golfers.
Tour players.
Yeah. I mean, they're looking at tour players. Okay, how can we make it more fair, or how can we restrict the tour players? I don't think that's the game. I think the game needs to be keep improving, keep applying as much technology and R&D as you can to it. My belief is golf is already hard. Like, we get it. How can we make it easier? If it's easier for tour players, they're all on the same level anyways. Does it really matter if it's a little bit easier or higher performing technology-wise?
So your take is the best players are still going to win.
They're still going to.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the best players are still going to win.
Yeah,
because
regardless.
it's the technology is not what pushes them to the edge. What they did in their own work. Obviously, technology is a big part of it, but at the same time, they're all in the same playing field. I'm not really for halting or putting a limit on what technology can do for the game, because I think that technology can do so much for the higher handicappers, the weaker players, and especially the shorter players, because I'm already a big believer that tee it forward isn't teeing it enough forward.
I'm with you.
So I'm a big fan of keep pushing technology. I want to see where we can go with it.
Yeah. Robbie, any thoughts?
I do believe they should roll the ball back.
Yeah?
Yes.
All right, let's see it.
Let's hear it.
Spirited debate. Here we go.
Yep.
For the tour.
Well, so you're in favor of bifurcation. One ball for the amateur, ball for the tour.
Amateurs need all the help they can get. Just absolutely make the best golf ball, best club heads for our amateur golfers to make the game as easy as possible. But on tour, something has to happen. They need to roll the ball back or do something. Because I need to see a decision on number 13 at Augusta. Like, they need to have a decision. Like, are you going to lay up or are you going to go for it? Not just bomb it over the corner and have a wedge in the green.
Well, they just moved the tee back.
But at some point, you can't move the tee any further back. Like,
I think
if we can all agree that regardless of the playing field, if it's a level playing field, right? If the constraints are the same through the basically the field. If everyone in the event has the same constraints and the longest players are going to win or the best players are going to win more often than not, then why not make it so that we have more of these classic golf courses that are still able to be used for championship golf?
Yeah, I would say that would be probably the biggest argument against it is being able to use the golf courses that have been around forever without really adjusting them too much.
Right.
I can see that. I can see that side of the argument.
Because, I mean, like you said, Seth, I mean, there's absolutely no reason that Titleist shouldn't be able to make the longest golf ball they possibly can for our amateurs and golfers who need help. But, like I said, there has to be something done to preserve the integrity of Augusta National in places like that just are one and the same to what golf is. And at a certain point, when the majority of field's carrying the ball 340, 350 yards, they just can't build the golf course to be able to handle that. Like, the guys are going to tear it apart. Like, you have to have some sort of semblance of tradition in the shots the guys are having to play for these golf courses.
Yeah, we're about to find out, right?
Yeah.
Because, what Bryson's doing and Wolfie and some of the guys that are hitting it, and DJ are hitting it that far.
Yep.
It was interesting. I had a conversation like just before we had our lockdown with Webb Simpson, and that was the first question he asked me. He was like, "What do you think about changing the ball?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. Like, what I want to know what his thoughts are because he's playing in the show." And his thing, he was like, I don't want to change the ball. Of course, he's not one of the longest hitters. He's not short.
Right.
He was more like, let's narrow the fairways, make the rough longer. But we saw, yeah, right.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, right. So that's my point is leading to like what we saw last week with the Open. The strongest players are still going to win because they can fight through the rough. They got shorter clubs in.
Because at a certain point, when the fairway gets narrow enough. Now you're penalizing the shorter hitters.
Yeah, exactly.
More.
So that's a good segue. Like, this isn't one of the questions, but it's like, what do you guys think about what Bryson's doing? And
It's
like
awesome.
I think it's amazing because it's much more than distance, as we know, because we know, our friend Chris Como and what Scott Fawcett has done with him. He's so much more strategic in what he's doing rather than just hitting it far. He's not. I mean, he's hitting it longer than everybody else, but it's not like crazy as far as like the stats are saying. But the fact that how he's playing golf courses, I think, and obviously we can't overlook the putting. Right, that's a whole nother subject. I had a conversation with a friend of mine that teaches on tour the other day, and how long is the arm lock going to be legal? Right, that's the next question.
Yeah.
I'm saying it now on my podcast. That
I don't know how
all
they-
it takes is like Webb or somebody with an arm lock to win another major, and they're going to start looking a little closer, just like they did the belly putter, because it's such an advantage. Thoughts?
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's anchoring to a different part of the body.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's technically still anchoring, but I mean, how far do you take it?
I don't know. That's
Yeah.
what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's like the next. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but I mean, I think that's the next thing that's going to be really, really closely looked at aside from the ball.
It'll be a topic.
So you would say the only thing the handle is allowed to touch is your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Kuchar's been using it for years, and he's
Yeah.
been amazing with it. So, like, give us your rundown on what your thoughts on Bryson, what he's doing.
Oh, I think it's incredible. I mean, I think that he has used every piece that he can to his advantage, which we've known about since he joined the tour. He does everything imaginable to take advantage of every little piece and be so strategic. And I mean, that you can't fault him for that. Why? Everybody crucified him coming out on the tour because he's a scientist and he's over analytical or whatever and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, like when you're out there and it's your craft and you put that much effort into it, you're looking at every single piece to get better. And when he had the time to completely rebuild his body and completely, obviously pick up yards. And like you said, yes, he is obviously very long and he's longer than most and he's a lot longer than he used to be. That doesn't always win championships. Yes, he did miss a lot of fairways in the U.S. Open and still won the U.S. Open. Yes, he is further down the fairway, and it's a lot easier to hit a wedge out of that rough than it is to hit an 8-iron or a 7-iron. Sure, I get that. I still am a big believer of what you do around the greens. And then those majors, it really matters what you're doing around the greens.
That's the decade stuff. Like I think he missed it on a lot of great spots.
100%.
Obviously, his chipping and putting was better.
Yeah.
There's so much to like unpack there. I mean, I know we could talk at length about Como and how they've sort of gone about gaining the weight, putting on the strength, but also increase keeping the functionality and the flexibility of his swing, because I don't think his swing has changed a tremendous amount. It's just now got more mass, right? And it's got some leverage, and there's a lot of little cool pieces in there that's causing him to use that to an advantage. But I think it's just really cool. I mean, whether you like him or not, I think the way he approaches problem solving is something that we all should strive for.
Yeah. I think he doesn't look at what other people have done. He looks at how can we do this in the most efficient and effective way.
Yeah. Breaks out of the box, right?
Yeah.
So it should be interesting when the only thing, I'll just say this and we can move on. The only thing that could hurt him now is like he keeps trying to go too far. And because he said, like, I've tried a lot of things that have failed, right, to discover what's worked, which is we know we're all big fans of that. It's like you can go too far. Like, you want a 56-inch driver? Like there's like you can go a little too far and then maybe it starts to hurt him a little bit. Right now he's in a pretty good spot. Does he really need to change much right now? Probably not. He needs to perfect what he's doing, right?
So to say just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like being able, but somebody that is that type A and like that is that curious has a tough time with that.
Yeah. So do you see somebody like Bryson having the career with the longevity of somebody like a Tiger or a Phil who's perfected their craft and kept their strengths going? Will he be able to do that?
I think right now the only thing that can slow him down is injury.
Yeah.
And maybe girls. Girls are undefeated.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We don't get to see what goes on behind the
Exactly.
scenes, but
Yeah.
he doesn't seem like that kind
a
of
lifestyle change or but
Yeah.
really injury is the only thing that can slow him down. I think he's
That's true.
got a. I mean, he's already had a fantastic career in a short time, but I think he's going to be good for a long time. But what the interesting thing will be is how he changes other people. Will people start to follow?
Great point.
Right? I mean, guys are hitting. I mean, Wolfie was hitting it just as far as him. He's got, totally different body type, different idea, different style. He's got the fast twitch going with, some speed. Will guys be like, all right, I'm gonna pack on 40. We're going after it. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, maybe not. Who knows? All right, moving on. So, next question by Austin Sheets 1. Why does it feel like my club face is very lofted and very far ahead of my hands at impact? That's a great question. Yeah. So why is my club head passing my hands? And I'm guessing, I'm not sure if he's talking about full swing or chipping, but it could go with both. So let's give him a concept and a drill. How about that?
All right.
Seth?
Okay. Sure. So, let's, one thing that I always look at is why did we reach this point? What did the club have to do in order to get to that point? A lot of times for many students, it could be a club closure issue. If the club face is too open, a lot of times you've got to use that flip, as we say, to try and close the club face, and the club face can get in front of the hands. Maybe look at different ways to close the club face. Again, this is totally off of just the simple question, not an actual ball flight or any sort of result. But I would take a look at different ways to close the club face. Could be a weaker grip can be a result of why we are, or a problem as to why the club head is getting in front of the hands. It could be we strengthen that grip maybe just a little bit. We try and figure out how to close the club face a little bit sooner. And then we try and actually lean the shaft forward just a little bit in order to get that forward shaft lean and get the club face a little less lofted. Could be what you had to drink the night before.
I love it. All right, so Robbie, tell us how you can use your feet in the ground to correct that.
Okay.
'Cause I know that's coming.
Well,
Yeah.
the face would be number one. Like you
gotta
said.
fix the face.
Right. Like if the face is open late,
Yeah, or in the backstroke, you're saying, or in like early transition, or what?
like coming down.
Yeah.
If the face is laying open,
Yeah.
you're gonna do. Probably the fastest way for you to solve that problem is to get the club face to pass the hands.
Flip it.
Yeah. Club pro guy.
Yeah.
But let's assume that
747 club
that's right.
swing theory. Yeah.
But if you're hitting pulls and your club face is passing your hands and you need to flip it later,
There you go. Yeah.
you probably need a better transition. So I would try to get the club head trailing your pivot a little bit better. Certainly in transition to try to create a different impact. Like I said, like if we need a better impact, we probably need a better transition. If we need a better transition, we probably need a better backswing. If we need a better backswing, we probably need a better posture. So it's
my, you're getting deep.
That's probably a little too much.
The reverse engineered investigative report.
Right. No, but I mean, I'm a big fan.
But you're right.
I'm a big fan of, just from a kinematic standpoint. I mean, I want to see the lead arm adducting in transition, right? So if you can do a little lead arm only drill and learn how to hit it pretty straight with your lead arm only, I think you're going to learn some good stuff.
Yeah, I think the drill I learned from you or Dr. Kwan or whatever, the 2-finger pinch drill, where you're trying to basically you take your left hand, put it on the club. It's on my Instagram if you want to follow me on Instagram. 2 fingers on just the index finger and thumb on just below the grip, right? And then feeling like the body is starting to rotate more towards the front side as the club's going back.
Yeah.
right? So it sort of takes that, leads us into like the trail arm stuff that we're going to talk about.
I mean,
but I mean, it's like it's such a again, it's like, does it, is the feet to do it? Is it like the body that, it's all connected in figuring out what works for the student to, like you said, adduct. I call it, the chest running and loading for you golf machine people out there, loading the fourth accumulator is such a massive thing. And I think it's very difficult for the average player to separate their shoulders from their torso. Mm-hmm. That's something that I'm really sort of diving into as far as like how to teach better.
Yeah. So, I mean, all right. So we're probably going to go down the rabbit hole here, but
okay. We're leading into
it. I'm not sure if he's already come out with this study, but Quan, at least when I went and did level 1, Quan was working on an X Factor study where he basically found that a lot of times the 3D systems that we use for kinematics are going to show that there's a separation between the pelvis and the torso, that there's a little bit of like an X Factor stretch there. Mm-hmm. And in his study, what he's found is that a lot of times that can be misleading. There's really not as much of a pelvis to thorax stretch and transition as you might think. Actually, what he sees, at least in his studies, is that the pelvis and the thorax actually tend to work a little bit tighter together. And really most of the stretch is happening more in the shoulder. So you're actually getting the arms to stretch against the upper body, which is basically being transported by the feet and the legs.
Yeah.
So
I would attest to that, because that if that was the case, if we did see that stretch, we'd see everybody that's any good be open with their hips at impact, and they're not always that way. Like me, I'm a perfect example. I don't have a whole lot of opening, but I have a ton of lag and like.
And it also explains why when you dig through the 3D graphs is that the 1, 2, 3, 4 stretch sequence is not. It just doesn't hold up as much as you might think.
Right.
You see plenty of 3, 1, 2, 4 sequences that play really well.
Yeah.
So I think the key there is that generally speaking, the body, the upper and the lower body is basically turning into your arms to change the direction of the momentum. So I
like that.
I use the word momentum a lot because I think people kind of can relate to it pretty well. They understand that, if you get a car rolling, you have a certain amount of momentum that's helping you. And then at some point, right, that the momentum's going to need to change directions. So I like to talk about, the feet and the legs creating the momentum of the backswing, right? So again, what do we see all day long? We see people swinging their lead arm across their chest, nothing going on downstairs, right? And because that's their idea of how to create momentum going back, well, guess what? More of the hand and the arm is what's getting them to change directions of that momentum coming down. So a lot of times I'll get non-rigid objects in their hands, like ropes, noodles. I think the orange whip's pretty good, generally speaking, just to get people accustomed to the idea that the arms and the club get moved by the feet and the legs, which is attached to the upper body, right? Mm-hmm. And then as they have momentum going back, at some point the backswing is going to end, right? There's going to be a point where you change directions, right? And you have a choice. You can either use the arms to change directions, or you can allow the feet and the legs through your core to kind of pull the arms into a different direction and pull the club into a different direction. So I use posture a lot because I think the way that people set up, like if you were to think about doing a deadlift, right?
Talking about the toes and the heels, right?
Yeah, your pelvis would be very anterior tilted. You'd be kind of more over the feet with your balance would be a little bit more toe heavy. And that makes sense. If you're going to leverage your arms to move weight, then yeah, it kind of makes sense to be stable in your legs. But if we're trying to create speed, we don't want to be stable. We want to create a dynamic movement kind of from the ground up. So I like people to get into a posture that feels that they can kind of dance and then use their feet and their legs to create momentum going back, and then use the feet and the legs to change directions coming down. So as a roundabout answer to your question, Austin Sheets.
Nice Cuomo or Quan promo there.
I would say
get certified.
that assuming your club face and the club shaft are reasonable in a reasonable position coming down, if you're seeing the club head pass your hands too soon, then you probably need to get your feet and your legs a little bit more involved in the change of direction.
Yeah, which is like the drill, right? So we can go into all the internal, external stuff, but yeah, that's a good answer. So we before we get into the trail arm stuff with our boy Mark Grace, somebody asked a question at Shankopotamus Golf, slowing the ball down versus speeding the ball up.
Me. It wasn't me.
Does the sequence stay the same or does it change, and which is more difficult for the average golfer? I think we kind of answered it right there.
Yeah.
My thoughts are, and we know from John Sinclair and the coasting that the lead arm and the torso tend to go sort of the same miles per hour, right? So the sequence, I don't think the sequence changes so much. It's more of the timing of the stroke and the way we slow the ball down, as the way we all sort of teach pitching and chipping now, thanks to our boy James Ridyard. I think slowing the ball down a lot of times is very difficult for players because I'm seeing a lot of club, hands, arms flying by the body pivot, and if they happen to make good contact, which is rare, the ball goes too far.
Right.
Any thoughts on that or that question? You can answer that question.
I would say that definitely the sequence changes when you go from speeding the ball up to slowing the ball down.
Yeah.
I think it starts with the intent, because I stole this from you. Your car analogy is the best. I mean, it's like, what are you trying to do? Are you pressing the accelerator, or are you putting it on cruise control?
Are you a Ferrari or are you a minivan?
Right. Right.
Tour players that tend to be minivans in chipping and putting.
Yep.
And Ferraris in full swing.
That's right.
And then it tends to be the opposite in amateur golfers.
Yeah. No, I mean, when we do our little world's, when we do the world's longest chip shot and the world's shortest full swing, one is usually a lot harder than the other for certain people. And if they can't hit the ball anywhere with a short swing, and they can't keep the ball from going off the green when they lengthen the swing, then that's a good indicator that they don't know how to speed the ball up and slow the ball down.
So
we've to piggyback on that, we've both experimented with that. Well, let's elaborate just a little bit on that. World's longest pitch shot and world's shortest full swing. You get those over accelerators, and this is in putting and in short game as well. When it comes to speed control, is when you get those players that are very over accelerating, especially on, we'll just use putting for an example for right now. You get those over accelerators in putting when their backswing is about, for let's just say a 30-foot putt, their backswing is about 4.5 inches long and their follow through is about 4.5 feet long. You got a lot of over accelerating. I got this. I definitely stole this from you at one point, Jason. Was and this is to kind of go with the car analogy. If I told you to wreck your car into a wall at 30 miles an hour, would you start 30 feet from that wall and gun it, or would you start a quarter mile away and put it on cruise control? Which one are you going to be more accurate with? Right, and they're always like, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to start from a quarter mile away. I said, okay, well, let's try and take the club back a little bit further than 4.5 inches and see if we can get the ball to stop quicker. Yeah. So one of the things that we've both talked about this, Robbie, in putting and in short game, it was funny. We had this conversation that we both clicked on the same thing.
We had the same idea without talking to each other.
Same exact idea within a week without talking to each other. It was you have to make the longest. So let's say we've got an over accelerator.
I got it from Billy Orr. I can't take credit for that.
Okay. Make the longest putting stroke that you can and still leave the ball short of the hole. Right? So there's the opposite of your over accelerator. Mm-hmm. Now the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth is, well, I'm just decelerating. Well, yeah. The way I describe it to the simpletons is just because I am one, is okay, well, when you reach the top of your backswing, when you reach the peak of your backswing, the club is moving 0 miles an hour. it can't go slower than 0. Okay, it's going to accelerate some. At some point, we just need it to coast. Okay, hit that 30 miles per hour and coast as opposed to accelerating through it. And it's so funny. I actually had a student with this last week. It was the same way, very much an over accelerator. And once we put that same drill into place, it's amazing how much closer he was leaving the ball to the hole than blowing it by or leaving it short. The dispersion was incredible.
The brain is an amazing thing, right?
There's few things that I found that can get people into that James Ridyard saucy little finish than telling them, I want you to make the biggest, longest backswing you can and have maybe like a 5-yard chip and say you can't hit it past the flag.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. And it's funny, I had a lady just a couple weeks ago who was kind of on that same pattern with chipping. A really short backswing, really put a whole lot in through the follow through, and I told her you're not allowed to ever hit a pitch shot where your club doesn't at least get above your knees in the backswing. And she's like, even for the little ones, it's got to get at least above your knees because she'd take it back just below her knees and then really take a full swing in the follow through for a lot of those. Just little things like that I think are super important. I mean, as much as we work on backswing for technique or anything else, but with short game especially, you throw in those little backswing pieces, the downswing changes. The intention has to change when you give them a focus point and say, okay, you had to take the club all the way back to above your shoulders and only hit it 5 feet. What are you going to have to do? Okay, well, I got to really slow it down.
And to piggyback off that, right, it's amazing what happens when you have someone in full swing, when you make the intention to hit the ball as far as you can with a very, very short backswing. You start to see some transition. You start to see some stretching that we like to see, like we just talked about, where their feet and their legs start to engage, right? They understand that, okay, in order to get the club to fling through impact, all right, well, I have to create a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Using the correct terminology in a lot of our lessons, it changes how the brain, functions. Like we've talked about lessons that we've done in the past. When you tell somebody to swing as fast as you possibly can, okay, a lot of times that comes from like arms, upper body. But when you say hit the ball as far as you can, things change.
Yes.
Right? They start using a little bit of lower body. They start really trying to send the ball as far as you can, as opposed to just getting the club up to speed quickly.
Right. I think so many people try to like correlate speed with like effort, like trying to swing hard. And I think when you get, like, again, I'll credit the rope, but when you get people to learn how to fling the rope at the right time, then they understand, like, oh, it's just a coordinated motion. It's not an effort thing.
Right.
It's just how I'm sequencing thing.
There's a reason why average golfers feel like they work harder to hit the ball than good players.
Yeah. But I would say, like, if we're to give a really nerdy answer, probably the transition sequence isn't much different from fastball and slow ball, but it's the peak order is much, much different.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I wouldn't say, and people ask me that all the time. It's like, is this the same as full swing? I'm like, yes. Like, really, in
kind of,
yeah. And you mean, like, but to the average brain, to the average golfer, like, you're not going to tell them, like, well, no, your shoulders need to go faster. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the sequence is generally the same.
Yeah, the transition sequence.
Exactly. Yeah. It just, like you said, the peak. I don't know.
The peaks aren't spiky.
Exactly. Yeah,
the peaks are just flat.
There would be much more coasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Right.
So the technique is more like full swing, but the ability to change distances is almost more like putting. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, the way again, like explaining it to a player, because I get that question quite a bit after I've got them to like actually develop some touch with like that low spinny wedge. Like, and we get the question like, how far can I hit this? Right? I'm like, well, the difference between the 40-yard shot and the 100-yard shot is when that trail arm starts to straighten, basically. Right? Which does what? Starts adding some velocity, adds some speed. So that's going to change the transition sequence. Not really much. It's just going to change some spikes. It's going to change some velocity of how we're delivering the club into the ball. It's kind of like when I teach bunkers, like why does a short finish go shorter than a long finish when the sequence is the same? Well, there's some momentum and there's some whatever. Who knows? Like you don't have to get deep into like why. It's like, all right, well, this is what happens in this, go ahead and hit it farther. You know what I mean? Like the right arm's not going to stay on your side anymore. It's going to come out and it's going to straighten. Like what's that do to making the ball and speed go up, right?
Yep.
So we don't have to get super nerdy about that. But
no, I agree. I think the trail arm straightening is a sign of how you're using energy.
Yeah, there you go. It's momentum, energy, whatever you want to call it, right? All right, cool. So let's dig into Mark Grace Academy.
My boy.
Your boy. Trail arm structure. What effect does trail arm structure have on downswing? What effect? This is a lot, right? This is like we can like boil this down. What effect does the hinging of the trail wrist have on arm structure? What factors do we need to consider changing trail arm structure? Options for those who can't externally rotate the trail shoulder, less than spine angle of forearm, like the TPI test would be the 90-90 test.
Yep.
What are some possible drills, modifications for grip and arm structure for the short game? That's like a podcast in itself.
That
right
is
there.
literally a podcast.
Yeah.
Literally.
But I mean, we talk a lot about trail arm. I mean, first you have to define like what's good trail arm structure, right? I mean, we have preferences because we've seen over the years, going back to the old school thought, in the Hall of Fame, there's a lot of different trail arm structures, right? You see some internally rotated shoulders and flying elbows. You see some elbows that are close together that sort of look like we would maybe want them to look. I would say I'm just going to throw out a Mike Hebron analogy when I'm looking at, because I see it on both sides, right? I see internally rotated shoulders at the top that cause guys to put, or players to put, force on the back of the shaft and push the hands out and get outside in, steep, whatever you want to call it. But I also see that go the other direction. But what Mike said, that sort of stuck with me 20 years ago, was I want to put the right arm in position to pull, not push. So if the right arm is on top of the shaft, obviously that's a sort of what you might call a overhand throwing motion rather than a sidearm throwing motion. Okay, now when that happens in the golf swing, can be different. And I probably completely lost the listeners at this point, but I don't really care. So and I'm doing it as I'm describing this, right? So we can do it early transition or we can do it in early backswing, right? We can put the right arm where the elbow's sort of pointing down and the elbows are together and we all sort of look like that look. But ask George Gankus, he kind of likes that crossed up look where the right shoulder is a little more internal, elbow's a little bit more out. Like you can argue both sides, right? I think it's when that happens and when the shaft sort of shallows or lowers, I think is the most important thing that I'm looking for and how we find out with our students. Now, what I would say also is the trail shoulder is not the only determination of shallowing the shaft. If not, those people would not be able to shallow the shaft. I think the forearm rotation, the supination, pronation piece, the wrist angles are probably even a bigger determination of how the shaft shallows. So if we can be internal and then, like I'm a perfect example. Like use me as a guinea pig. I can't pass the 90-90 test. I'm super shallow in my downswing. Okay, because I've got very limber wrists and I also have a lot of form rotation and I understand how to deliver the club into the ball, right? So it's a lot of that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Add on to that, Robbie or Seth.
I would say that it's kind of depends on how it gets there and then how they change directions. Like what's their transition like? Like for me, if let's say they were to kind of swing it in behind them like a Matt Kuchar, then yeah, they probably need to be a little bit more internally rotated.
So it's like an arm, like how much arm lift? What's the left arm plane? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like it depends on how it gets there, but let's say they had a real kind of like abrupt, almost like a snap transition where they have a really abrupt change of direction, then it's probably not a great idea for them to be across it, internally rotated, because again, they don't have the time, right? So if their transition gives them less time, then they probably need it in a place that's a little more similar to where they want it to be at impact. Now, if they're like a silky Fred Couples type of transition to where they have a lot of time, then you could be argued that there's probably some speed benefit to it having to go from internal rotation towards external rotation coming down.
Like Matt Wolf.
Yeah.
Right. Angel Cabrera kind of comes to mind. Like
Right.
some guys that in the old days that sort of got it up there and shallowed it out. But you look at that. Nicholas a little bit that way. Jack Nicklaus. I mean, he wasn't as flying as most people would say, but they would argue like it's a flying elbow, whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of places to play from up there.
Yeah,
depending on your transition sequence.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's just kind of what's the shot they're trying to hit? Where you need it to get to? What time how much time are they giving themselves to get it into that spot? And then where are you going to put it to line it up the best?
Yeah. So like sort of what he's asking the question, I think, is really what are the matchups if they can't rotate the shoulder like we're talking about. For me, I would say I would prefer a lower lead arm in that scenario, but making sure that they don't hump it. Right, because that's if the trail elbow gets behind them and their arms are too low, then they hump it, then they're in big trouble because now they're trapped. Right, so it's kind of like figuring out what can that player do, what matchups are going to work. Right, you may be regulated to like a fade pattern, which is fine. Yeah, right. Then you just have to figure out how do you like get some stuff going on the lead side, like you're talking about with. What are the feet doing? What's the transition doing? Can you get them opening up sooner? Like something I've learned from the information that we've talked about with Quan is how sometimes where I feel like before getting them to use the ground better and like opening up sooner, I always thought was going to get them more outside and steeper, and sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes it actually shallows them out. Yeah. AK, like what Gankus talks about, like keeping their hands back. If you can get somebody to keep their hands back, God bless you. Right, it's a tough thing because everybody wants to hit it, right? But I think but again, knowing your player, testing him out, feeling out kind of what works and how they process information is huge.
Yeah, George talks about this a lot. It's like, there's a bunch of different combinations between the shoulder rotation, the forearm rotation to get the club in the same spot. Yeah, right. You can have the shoulder really internally rotated, but if the forearm's supinated, the club could be in the same spot.
There you go.
You could be very externally rotating the shoulder, but if you pronate the forearm a little bit, you can get the club in the same spot. I guess, that's a really good question. Yeah. I'd probably ask, how do you want the club to move different, and then what direction are things moving in transition, and then how do you want to load that going back? Because I'm a big believer that the stuff that you want to load in transition, you want to counter load in the backswing. So like a good one would be like left shoulder, like lead shoulder adduction. If that shoulder adduction is something that you want to have happen come down, then it's probably not a good idea to load it all going back. You want to have some slack in that shoulder to allow for it to adduct and to load in transition. Yeah, which is like goes back to like the hands in piece. Yeah, which I enjoy, but I don't want it to be just arms only. Right. I want to make sure that the pivot's moving, so there is some slack there, and I call it almost arriving at the top together. So then when they do transition, that torso runs in the lead arm and then creates less slack. Right. Yeah, it's like I think that's a great point. So, do you see different hand paths accompanied with different hinge types. So like, let's say that if someone were to go like minimize to max 5, calcs-esque, like underloaded, do you typically see a different backswing hand path? Because I think it's really interesting what he does, at least what I've been able to gather from his Instagram account, that he's been doing with trail arms going back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had from Scott was that I always thought a lot of hinge created speed, right? But then understanding how the wrist angles work now, like more hinge creates more, in extension of lead wrist, which may create a more open club face. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions to that I've been using a lot of underloading patterns a lot, especially for people that need more width, right, in their backswing and even in their downswing. Like, I mean, my whole mindset's changed completely about the golf swing probably in the last 10 years. But, I was the guy, like, hold that lag and, like, I want to try to get the shaft like as close to the right shoulder as possible. And that's just not feasible now that we understand what really is happening in the golf swing. So tell me the question again, like, specifically if the hand path is straighter.
What I've, at least in my experience, what I've noticed is that it's a lot easier to change the hand path when you change the way that they hinge it. Like, if
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of times, like, if you want to get the hand path to change, a lot of times, right, the way they hinge it just won't allow them to do it unless you change the way that they hinge.
Yeah, I understand now.
And I can give you, like, an example would be, like, I guess if I needed someone's hand path to get less deep.
Okay, which is, like, very rare.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens, though. I've had plenty of guys that get too deep.
Like, a lot of times, at least what I've found is that when their hinge type is a little bit more, like, underloaded, I guess, where
more owner flex with the lead wrist,
and the right wrist is a little bit more hinged back.
Yeah,
kind of the momentum of the club is taking them around, and to get the hand path kind of feeling like it's kind of in symmetry with momentum of the club, the hands go in. And I've seen this a lot where, like, I have certain students, like, if I want their hands to go up more, I get them to hinge it up more, because then they're feeling kind of like, the momentum's going this way.
I'm with you.
To get it kind of in balance.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen more. Yeah, I guess I think about that as the direction the hands are moving, but also the height of the lead arm, like how much arm lift. So I think a lot of times that will follow the golf club. Right, so a guy that rolls it inside, like, it could be flexed or extended or rolled, whatever, we see all of the above. I tend to see more from that, like, the center of mass gets behind the hands, and I see more lift. So I see the hands actually moving more straight when the center of mass gets behind the hands early. That's what I see. And while we're fighting it, I'm trying to get them to do the opposite. I'm trying to get them to move the hands in and keep the center of mass out. Right, so that's tough, right? Because from a golfer's perspective, and this is getting feedback from my players, is okay. Now it feels more shut, which we really know it's not shut. Lead wrist is actually more extended,
right?
And, like, I love, like, old Rory videos of, like, takeaway. Like, his lead wrist never changed, like, from 1 to 3. It always was like it was just stayed there. Like, there was no roll, there was no flex, there was no. I mean, it was just beautiful,
quiet.
Yeah, very quiet. So that's kind of like what I would like preference-wise, but I don't see it, like, following that. But but a lot of times when you want to get the hands to do something different, the club needs to go. If you make the club go somewhere, then the hands and arms will go somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's.
Because I think a lot of players have, like, an intuitive sense of kind of the handle and head relationship.
100%. Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you can change that relationship, then they'll change the hands to try to find that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They don't know it, but it's just, it's intuitive, it's unconscious type of deal.
Yeah. Because it's interesting, like, with the hinge type, I mean, I know Scott doesn't just teach one pattern, but
No.
like at least in the posts that have said, okay, like constant radius underload pattern, a lot of times I see like a band underneath the right humerus bone, and the elbow gets very deep and very behind, which I guess if they're hinging it in a certain way, that kind of matches up pretty well.
If it stays that way.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that's subjective. Right?
Yeah.
It's tough to tell.
But I think there's a lot of variations, and it's kind of interesting to see because there's very few times, at least in the backswing, at least in my day, I don't know what you guys think, but very few times where I'm getting the right elbow to go more lower and more behind going back.
No, never. No, I'm always teaching the right arm to actually stay extended longer.
Yeah.
I want to create width early, even width and depth early, which most people don't understand because they're trying to tuck the right elbow. See, so that affects all that, right? So it gets the club too far inside. It made me think about the guy I just started working with. He just finished second in our club championship, mini tour guy. Came to me a couple of weeks ago before I remember gas was like talking about pressure, right? He's like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it, like whatever. And he's had a bunch of coaches, obviously used to play for a living, and what he was trying to do was the complete opposite of what really he needed to do as far as what I'm looking at, especially with good players. I'm looking at the center of mass, and I'm looking at the handle of the club.
Yeah.
Right. And how that's working in relationship. If you're going to fix somebody the quickest, you can fix him in the backswing. So he was a little bit of an early roller. Center mass got deep, lifted it way up. So he's laid off at the top, and he's trying to hit a draw. Of course, now the center mass lines up too soon, what I call a crossover, tips it out a little bit, and he's hitting pulls or he's hitting pull cuts, and he hates it. Right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to keep the center mass out. I'm going to keep the center mass on top, and then I'm going to get the club feeling crossed up at the top, which ended up being lined up perfectly. So now when he transitioned, center mass stayed back and he hits a draw, right? So it's just all we're doing is doing the opposite in what that player's perception of feel is. And this guy's a really good player. He shot 65 the first day when he went out. So, and man, it's like, it's that simple sometimes, but that's how we look at it as teachers.
Right.
Merz?
Yeah, man. I'm a fly on the wall here.
All right. So next question.
Oh, drills. Hold on.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, did we lose that? So we talked about trail arm structure a little bit. So options, drills, possible drills, modifications for grip.
So
that's a great question.
If there's a lot of information out there regarding how the trail arm should load relative to the trail hand grip, right? So basically trying to match up if you've got a more under grip with your trail hand,
stronger grip for the listeners.
Elbow's going to track lower and more behind. If you've got a weaker trail hand, the elbow's going to track more higher and more in front. What are our thoughts on that matchup? Or do we do we think that there's a more advantageous grip to trail arm relationship going back depending on?
Oh, wow, that's a moving target. I think it's I look at more what happens to like from 1 to 3. Like if I see a grip, like I see a trail arm grip that's too weak,
right?
And then I see a lot of like forearm rotation going back, a lot of roll,
like what would be called maybe more of an under takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. That would get the face more open, the shaft more flat. That definitely is a sort of a red flag for me.
When do you strengthen the grip in that point, or when do you change the elbow, shoulder?
It would probably. Godly, I'd have to see him hit a lot of balls, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's so complex.
No, but it's a great topic, but it's so subjective because there's so many different variables that could come out of it. I can't tell you the last time I left that grip alone. Okay. Yep. So if it gets that, we're talking when I'm demonstrating, you can't see the listeners, but I'm demonstrating like a grip that's the V's pointing to my left ear.
Right.
And we see that with good players sometimes. Like even the guy that I mentioned today, the one-timer, his right arm was a little bit like I could see his right arm was a little high, and I thought for sure his grip was weak. It was just his right arm was too straight. So I had to soften up his right side a little bit. But you see that all the time as a cause of a roll. That's what we call a face roll. So again, you gotta decide on what's functional and what's not, right? So, but I'll tend to change that. I see more nowadays. I don't know what it is. I see more stronger grips now. I'm weakening grips a lot more than I ever used to 10, 15 years ago.
I'm seeing an epidemic of excessively shut club faces.
Yeah, there you go.
Back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that too. 100%. Like I'm seeing really, really strong right hands, like left hands that look pretty good, right hands that are super underneath. And that's causing a lot of like, retracting of the right shoulder and the elbow and stuff. I mean, I don't know. Who knows, right? I mean, it's the internet.
Yeah. Is that a comfort thing?
I don't know. And here's another thing: is I see this. Tell me if you guys see this. This is going deep. I'll see a pretty decent grip, or even if like with an iron swing, and I'll see somebody grab a driver and it'll get stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're trying to like, more right side bend,
the
whatever.
ball position being more forward, things like that. I feel like can change a lot of that.
I'll see the hands get stronger. So I dealt with that with like an average guy, and like it took me a while to like figure it out, because like I had to get back in front of him, like, dude, I'm seeing, like, I'm videoing his hands going, your iron swing is amazing. Like, what's going on? Why are we like, I'm looking at the top of the swing and it's like 15 degrees more shut with the driver than an iron. Something's happening with the way he's holding the club. Yeah. So I figured out that his grip was stronger with his driver. He didn't know he was doing it. So it's like stuff that you got to like sort of just pay attention to.
So how did you adjust his pre-shot routine to make his grip the same?
He had to be aware of it. Like he didn't know. Like he had to be aware of it. Like he had to put because we had changed his grip anyways because it had gotten too strong. So I was like, you need to get your hands on the club first and then walk into it and like don't change it.
Was he like putting the club down?
Oh, he's putting the club down and he just grab it
up in front of the stance with the with the right shoulder tilt, side bend, and then you grip the club after that.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, it was crazy, and he's hitting snap hooks, and I'm like, what's going on? So it's just little things that we sort of catch that I don't know why. Right? Why do people swing across the driver more than an iron? I mean, we can speculate. Balls forward, club, whatever. But it's just little things that you gotta like look at everything and figure it out. All right. Anything else to add on the trail arm stuff?
No, I mean I'm pretty. I use trail arm only drill quite a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one arm drills are very handy for that.
Yeah, we do a ton. I mean, I know we all do a ton of like right arm and left arm only drills.
Yep.
Teach one for me. Just getting them into impact and helping them understand that the right arm shouldn't be straight at impact. Like that's a big, usually an aha moment. That doesn't fix everybody. I'm not saying it does, but I think concept-wise, understanding that that's where they're trying to get, feeling like the right arm's underneath the left, and then moving them through sort of a progression of whether it's half swing drills or left arm. I love the open hand drill where we're just basically taking the right hand and putting it on the side of your left hand, no pressure, or the I can't remember what I call it, but just basically
I call it the overlap.
Yeah, just the overlap.
You grip the club in your left hand.
Claw drill.
The four fingers,
sort of claw.
The four fingers of your right hand just basically create a quadruple.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a bit more of it guides the club a little bit easier for people to actually hit it. So I kind of go left arm only with maybe my right hand on my left bicep if they can't do that, and then claw drill, and then open hand drill, and then our 2-finger index finger thumb drill is like amazing for just hitting that little pitch shot and then building that up in the full swing is good. I like the one you had where you had the right putting it underneath. No, it was this way.
So
yeah, this was the trail arm. You put the left finger, the left hand underneath the armpit of the right.
Right.
So explain that one.
So like what Mark Bull found in his a lot of his studies is that the scapular stability is a big deal in terms of speed gains through the segment. So we've all had students who, like, when you look at it, they just don't swing as fast as you think they should, dependent on like how their legs are moving, how they're like the whole, like everything's moving. It's like, man, like you should, this should be just going faster. Like you just don't quite know why. And he's found that, like, if a lot of times the missing link from the feet all the way to the club is the shoulders. So particularly when the trail shoulder gets, basically when it elevates and it protracts kind of out in front, a lot of times that's a lot of energy loss. And
love that.
And
yeah.
a lot of times it manifests in where the right elbow goes, because if I were to get my shoulder up and more in front, what you see is what happens to my right elbow is it goes more behind. And you can see I can keep my thorax in the same place, but as I start to move my shoulder up and forward, my elbow goes independently kind of more behind my rib cage. So
how do we get rid of that?
So a drill that I got from Mark Grace and kind of adapted to kind of fit a lot of what I see is I take the left hand and I have it dead open right kind of high up on the bicep, on the right bicep, kind of not the bicep, I'm sorry, the right pec. Have it open kind of like so. And you take the tricep of the right arm and you put it on the fingers of the left hand. And so your command there is to make sure that you're able to hit shots without that tricep slipping off of your hands. Mm-hmm. So what they get to understand is that, okay, well, really the main function of the wrist is to move the club head, advance the club head more up and down, right? And you're going to get some elbow fold, but it's going to happen more kind of in a bicep curl type of direction. It's not going to happen in terms of a thrust direction. So the elbow, again, isn't moving independently of the rib cage kind of out away from you like this. The elbow is going to basically do like a bicep curl.
Like a curl, yeah. He's
yeah.
Sort of moving his arm up and down.
So with that cue, again, like it's really nice because it gets the shoulder externally rotated and kind of depressed and retracted into the rib cage without you having to say a whole lot. Because if the shoulder was up and forward, you couldn't get the tricep on the fingers of the left hand. You have to have the shoulder down and back in order to get the tricep on that hand. And then again, if in transition that shoulder is elevating and protracting, the tricep's going to slip off of your fingers. Mm-hmm. So just hitting shots where you're getting that connection between where the rib cage is going and what the shoulder is doing, a lot of times cleans up a lot of the forces that you see in transition where they're steepening that club. Because I had a guy the other day who was a prime candidate of like backswing geometry is pretty darn good. Mm. And then when he goes and he changes directions, his chest is doing what it should, but the club is steepening because he's putting forces in the grip with his right hand. And turns out the kind of the direction the right elbow was going was causing him to have to push against the handle this way.
Yeah. That's Tim Hunt.
Yeah.
That's I'm so use that.
So for him, when we created more of a connection in his trail shoulder where it was more depressed and retracted, now when he changed directions, he could actually create some force on the grip that would cause it to shallow and kind of fall behind him, as opposed to putting the fingers in a position to push against the handle. So I use that for trail arm. It's really good with the 2-club drill. If you wanted to transition from 2-club drill to an actual, okay, well, this is why your right arm isn't getting that club parallel. A lot of times you can kind of blend that together. But, yeah, I'm a big fan of doing it that way. I've had a tremendous amount of success with changing transitions, particularly with that drill. I would want us to talk about skill versus technique.
Yeah.
When and how do we choose to go one route before the other?
Yeah. Well, let's let Merz lead off on that one. That's a great one to lead to close with.
Skill versus technique. Well, I think it depends a lot upon functionality. Do you have the proper technique to be able to function? We look a lot at what does it take to complete the task. If we're able to complete the task with a completely dysfunctional feature, according to our eyes, well, do we change the technique, or are we going to put them into a different skill? I think a lot of times if we see enough of the dysfunctional pattern being put into place, then we've got to go a lot more technique. I definitely do a lot of skill-based learning. We all have involved a whole lot of that into our teaching, but I think a lot of it can even depend on the goals that you have with the student. Is this student looking towards, is he a once-a-week golfer? All he does is play, not practice, doesn't really put a whole lot of effort into changing any sort of body features or changing any sort of patterns. Well, we're just going to go out there and make his patterns work and do some skill development. If we have the ability to make change, then I think technique is a huge part of it. But it's funny how you get into those students that really feel dedicated into making change in their technique, but don't really have the ability to, or have such an ingrained pattern that it takes a lot of effort to, or you really feel like, or you find out later down the road that they don't have the ability or the motivation to really stick with changing technique. Then we do skill stuff. I mean, that's what I can't tell you how many times I break down a student and say, okay, well, we've done 5 lessons in the last month and a half, or spread out over a bigger period of time. We come back and do the same thing each time. Well, we're just going to figure out how to make your technique work and do some skill development.
Yeah, so it almost boils down to how long do you continue to try?
Exactly.
Right? How many lessons? To me, it's like whether it's our fault or it's their fault.
Yeah.
How many times do you continue to work on the same thing before you move on? Right? And try to like find another, like unlock another code.
There's no, that's the beautiful
another road.
The beautiful thing about where we're at as teachers is there's no right answer.
We don't know. We don't know.
And that's what it takes to getting to know your student and building the relationship 100%. With your student to really understand where they're coming from, and what they have time to do.
Yeah, you don't tell them. Obviously, you're like, man, this is not working or whatever. Like, you just sort of transition as a coach and go, I mean, I think that's just basically, that's an experience piece that you have to sort of go, man, if we're working on takeaway like 5 times in a row, like, I mean, like, come on, like okay, what's the workaround, right? I mean, like, can you not do it? Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you can either go tough love on them and fire them, or you can be like, all right, let's figure out how to make this guy better in another way, right? So,
figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, that's a very, very difficult question, but it's a great question. It's a great topic, but it's such a it's almost like, I mean, skill versus technique, but then almost like skill-based learning versus performance-based learning, or what do you when do you, like we were talking about earlier, like when do you feel like your student is competent enough to like start doing more encore stuff or more random practice, or like that's very, very subjective, obviously, but you have to be thinking about that all the time if you're trying to get to that destination of whatever their goal is. Right.
No, I think like the best definition of skill that I can think of is that your ability to produce intention. What is your intention and what's your ability to produce?
There you go. Yeah, it doesn't match.
So, like, I think there's always this cost-benefit analysis when you have a student. It's like, okay, well, where are they currently at? What are their goals? What's the potential cost of going down this technique rabbit hole? And then what's the likelihood that with their current technique, I could shift their intent to a point to where if they're able to produce it, they can reach their goal, right? So, like, a perfect example would be like a 30-minute like a lady who sees you for 30 minutes who can't get the ball in the air. A lot of times that time constraint doesn't give you the roadmap to be able to make necessarily the technique adjustment you always need to make. So at that point, you got to make an assessment. It's like, okay, if I shift their intent with their current technique, do they have an ability to reach the goal for today's session, which is oftentimes is, okay, learn how to get the ball in the air. Like, can you simply hit the middle of the club face? And if I think that, yes, I think with their technique, if I'm able to shift their intent, that they'll be able to do it, then I think that you got to do it skill. You just got to go skill based.
Well, and that's where we live, like in our world. Like we're not teaching tour players. We're not teaching, you know, I mean, not a lot, right? I mean, I'm just talking the main source of, you know, the income and what we teach. There's a lot of different, the golf lessons look very, very different.
Yep.
Right. And there's a lot of players out there that come to me and half the time we're just talking about life. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's a successful golf lesson. You know, there's a whole different layer of the onion, right? But you got to figure that out. Like, you can't go deep with that guy, but you can't go shallow with the guy that needs it more. Right. I don't know how to put it any better than that after a couple glasses of wine. So, but it's like, and you guys get it. I mean, you're learning that teaching golf is more than just technique. Teaching golf is more than just information. Teaching golf is understanding the people, understanding relationships, and understanding the way people learn and how they respond, and then how to gain their trust. Because you're going to have people that you meet now that I've had people that I've taught for over 25 years. Like, that's huge. That's a big compliment. They've joined the club because I'm at the club. Like, I mean, that can't be a bigger compliment. And you guys are gaining that now. So to get that, it's like you're just doing the little things that make people want to get better at golf and want to be around you, right? And that's what we're figuring out. Good stuff, boys. So let's wrap. This has been an epic podcast, man. This has been, again, well, we're gonna try, like, just for the listeners out there, we're gonna try to do this every couple weeks, once a month at the most. If you think this is valuable, and send in your questions, right? Like, hit us up, DM any of the three of us your questions, topics, anything you want us to cover. But we're gonna do it because this is what we do, and we like getting together and like talking golf and nerding it up a little bit, but also we want to help everybody out there. We want to help everybody be better coaches, and we want to help some players out there. So let the listeners know how they can get a hold of you guys. Not that they don't already know if they follow us, but we can never have more. So Seth, give us your handles.
Instagram, Twitter. It is Seth Merz PGA.
Cool.
Go follow.
Yeah.
Please, yes. And mine is at Rob Fails Golf.
For everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the things.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
What do we tell her when we're setting up for juniors? What do we always say? Come on.
Super easy, super simple, super fun.
That's it, baby.
I love it. That's a great way to close. You guys are the best. I love you guys.
Thank you.
I love you
You're
too.
the best.
Yep.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you again to my boys, Seth and Robbie, for bringing the heat. They definitely came in throwing 100 on this one, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the content. Send me a DM. Let me know how you like it. I've already gotten several notes and DMs from a lot of you out there, so I appreciate that. Also, make sure you follow the boys on Instagram and Twitter at Rob Fails Golf and Seth Merz PGA, and also follow me at Golf Guru TV. Thank you again to our sponsors, Straight Down Apparel and nvidhemp.com, and make sure you use the promo code GURU20 when you go to nvidhemp.com and buy your CBD products. And also, big shout out to my marketing team at Swing U. The website is now live, so go check that out. Make sure you leave your email at the bottom to get my weekly Golf Guru newsletter, which you'll get a couple of different videos and some content, also a link to some really cool stuff. So make sure you check that out. If you have a question or comment, you can email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com, or just hit me up on the DM. The music on this podcast is brought to you by Kevin McLeod and Zach Mullet. And as I always leave you with, make sure you study, make sure you practice, make sure you teach, and then also, most importantly, pass it on. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.